an album quest.
That's the one. And for anyone new to this concept, you should know this is the brainchild of Greenstrokes, the author of a blog series called, fittingly, Album Quest, the search for the best album of all time.
It's an amazing project.
It is. It's the ultimate exercise in, I'd say, critical endurance. He's transformed a massive personal music collection into this ruthless, competitive sport.
And when we say ruthless, we absolutely mean it. This is, for all intents and purposes, a musical World Cup.
Yeah, that's the best analogy.
Every single album in the author's library is randomized. They get put into groups of 4.
And then the work starts.
You listen to each album repeatedly, not just once, but over and over and over.
It forces you to get past your initial impression.
Exactly. Then you rank them from 1st to 4th, and only the top 2 get to advance to the next round, if your album comes in 3rd or 4th.
It's gone. Consigned to history. Out of the running for best album of all time.
The process demands this constant, active, comparative listening. It's really designed to expose the subtle flaws, but also the hidden strengths of music when it's just pitted directly against its rivals.
And when the listener is forced to engage critically for hours on end, you can't just have it on in the background.
Not at all. And today, we are opening the file on round 1, group 215.
Ah, this one.
And I need to start by quoting the author, because he did not hold back at all. This specific group was labeled a complete chore to get through.
Ouch.
And less than inspiring. It was, it seems, a trial by fire, a group designed for rapid elimination, not for celebration.
Which, ironically, makes it perfect for our analysis today.
How so?
Well, our goal isn't to find the masterpiece that advanced. It's to understand why these 4 albums, when placed in this very specific competitive environment, failed so profoundly to engage the listener.
I see. So what can we learn from a round that was just defined by boredom?
Exactly. What critical metrics can we extract from a round that's marked by such, pervasive tedium?
Let's introduce the contenders then, the 4 unlucky albums that created this musical vacuum.
All right, First up, the ultimate victor in this uninspiring battle, Who Built the Moon by Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds.
Okay. Next, the album that just barely survived, Scraping By. Still on My Mind, from Dido.
Then in 3rd place, we have an album that was deemed just too passive for the contest, Chaleur, Humaine, the debut from Christine and the Queens.
And finally, the source of the most intense genre frustration, the one that collapsed into 4th place.
The Giveaway compilation, Classic Rock The Masters, a real mixed bag, as we'll see, in just about every sense of the word.
Before we even dissect the first note of music from any of these, we have to talk about the psychological baggage.
Oh, absolutely.
The author brought so much of it into this round, and he flagged it immediately. It changes the entire context of the review.
This is an essential detail. We could call it the gift problem.
The gift problem. I like that.
The author noted that a staggering 3 of these 4 albums, Gallagher, Dido, and Christine and the Queens, were explicitly requested by him.
As Christmas gifts.
As Christmas gifts from extended family.
Now, you have to think about that irony for a second. As a listener, you ask for a specific piece of music. You are signaling to the world, and more importantly to yourself, I desire this. I anticipate pleasure from this.
You've pre-approved it.
Exactly. But when that highly anticipated music enters the brutal gauntlet of the album quest, it immediately falls flat and just becomes a chore.
The expectation is so crucial here. Requesting an album sets the highest possible bar of desire. You've curated your own taste and then, invested in it.
Or had someone else invest in it for you.
Right. And when that requested album fails to deliver under the specific weight of active, repeated, comparative listening, the disappointment is just compounded.
It's not just a bad album at that point.
No. It's a failure of your own taste-making. A failure of your own anticipation.
It also injects this heavy dose of self-deprecation into the critique, doesn't it? It's almost as if the author is internally apologizing for his own choices.
I think that's right. This context immediately casts a shadow over any kind of objectivity in the assessment for this group. It makes the negative feedback feel far harsher than a review of a random album might be.
So is there a term for this? A kind of psychological bias?
You could frame it as a universal thing. High expectation bias. It often leads to disproportionate negative feedback when the reality is just average.
You expect a masterpiece, you get something that's just adequate.
And you're more disappointed than if you had no expectations at all. So this group 215 was, in a way, destined for negativity from the start, simply because the author wanted these albums to be good. He was rooting for them.
And they let him down.
They did.
So our mission today is to sift through this very negative, personally frustrated review. We need to detach the author's subjective disappointment about his Christmas presents from the specific technical and structural reasons why these albums failed in the album quest.
And we should start with the album that was rejected with the most vehemence.
The fourth place finisher.
The last place finisher. The most ignominious exit from the album quest went to the compilation Classic Rock the Masters. And this one was doomed before the first track even played.
Absolutely. The author brought just this intense, accumulated baggage to this review.
He really did.
First, let's just note what this thing actually was. A 2007 magazine giveaway CD.
Right. Not a commercially curated best of that you'd buy in a store.
That immediately suggests a lower quality bar. Right. For track licensing, for selection, for everything.
But the real issue wasn't even that. It was the author's personal history with the bands featured on the disc. He cited years of run-ins, he called them. Yeah, having previously reviewed their albums or seen them live, and always walking away, in his words, less than impressed.
So we can see the bias being built here, brick by brick. He had existing negative history with Megadeth, with Dream Theater, Stone Sour, Dragon Force. He even detailed a specific trauma.
The Trivium incident.
Yes, seeing Trivium supporting Iron Maiden and being, and I'm quoting, frankly disgusted by their lack of quality.
When you enter a competition and you already actively dislike nearly half the entrants on a compilation, the deck is just hopelessly stacked against it.
The ranking is preordained.
Pretty much. The author didn't just review the music here, he was relitigating old musical grudges.
And to fully understand the depth of this portrayal, I guess, we need the context of his shifting relationship with Classic Rock magazine itself.
Yes. This isn't just about a bad track list.
No, it's about a failure of genre representation.
The magazine, from its inception, or at least from around edition 4, was characterized by the author as pining for the olden golden days.
What does that mean exactly?
We're talking the foundational pillars of the genre. Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath. That was the author's personal definition of classic rock.
Okay, that was the identity he bought into.
But the magazine, like the genre itself, had to evolve, and often did so, awkwardly. The author remembers a brief, somewhat confused attempt to make sense of nu metal during one phase.
Right, everyone tried to do that.
And this leads to the critical shift. The author perceived the magazine as eventually abandoning its core identity. It morphed into what he bitterly called a Kerrang clone.
So a much heavier, more modern focus.
Exactly. A hard pivot toward heavier sounds. It was leaning heavily into death and thrash metal rather than the softer, more progressive rock acts he preferred, like, say, Fleetwood Mac or Genesis.
And this shift is what turned the compilation from just a free gift into a source of genuine offense.
Yes. The tracks they selected, these modern metal acts, they weren't just judged as bad music, they were judged as a betrayal of what the title classic rock was supposed to represent to him.
The personal breaking point for him is such a great anecdote. The moment he dropped his subscription,
Amazing.
he canceled it because the magazine slagged off Big Country's amazing Peace in Our Time album.
Dismissing it for having a tired bagpipe guitar sound, which, for a Big Country fan, is the whole point.
It shows you just how deep that emotional loyalty runs. For him, the magazine had lost its way, and this compilation was just more proof.
But let me introduce a little critical friction here. Is it really fair to penalize a compilation CD for a magazine's shifting editorial politics?
That's a good question.
Shouldn't we as analysts try to judge the tracks in isolation, regardless of the fans' loyalty?
In a perfect world, maybe. But
Yeah.
in the album quest context, which is so subjective and it's fueled by this repeated listening fatigue, that prior bias is everything.
I suppose so.
If the listener has to force themselves through a track because they inherently disagree with the genre itself, that track fails the test of sustained engagement immediately. It just becomes dirge because the listener has already decided they don't want to hear it.
That's a fair point. The context is the killer.
So let's dive into the track list critique of this 66-minute Masters collection itself. Because the irony in that title is what truly drove the author crazy.
He questioned the entire premise, didn't he? Are any of these clowns really masters of anything?
That's the quote. He saw it as a collection of bad and fair-to-good tracks, not a showcase of genre leadership.
It started, surprisingly, with a bit of a mixed bag. It offered a glimmer of hope, which was probably the worst thing it could have done.
The deceptive introduction.
Totally. The opening track was Dream Theater's Constant Motion, which was deemed okay, but less than great.
He called it a generic Metallica copycat.
Competent, but derivative. But then an immediate counterpoint, Porcupine Tree's Fear of a Blank Planet followed, which the author called quite a cool track.
So 2 tracks in, it's surviving. It's got diversity, if not consistency.
The problem started with the rapid decline. It showcased that lethal hit-and-miss pattern that just kills the flow of any compilation.
What came next?
Well, we had Megadeth's barely tolerable Sleepwalker, which even for a Megadeth fan is apparently not a highlight.
And that was followed by Blackstone Cherry's excellent Rain Wizard.
So you're constantly jolted. You go from something that actively pleases you to something you have to actively endure. It creates whiplash.
But the real catastrophe,
Yeah.
the section that actively ruined the compilation and sealed its 4th place fate, that was the transition into the full-throttle thrash and death metal section.
This is where the magazine's modern identity truly alienated the author. This is the section that requires maximum listener endurance.
What are we talking about here?
We are talking about Dragon Force's specific brand of fast, high-pitched music, which the author dubbed cheese metal.
And terrible as usual.
Yes. Then Opeth, who were described simply as sounding satanic,
Yeah.
a very quick dismissal of a complex, progressive metal band.
And then we hit Trivium, the band that was already flagged from that Iron Maiden live incident.
And they were just labeled bland.
So you get this trifecta of irritation. Too cheesy, too satanic, and too bland, all within just a few minutes of each other.
And then the descent into obscurity. We had Machine Head's Now I Lay Thee Down, which the author says blurred indistinguishably with tracks from Redemption and Beneath the Machine.
He called them collectively some obscure metal acts.
When the music starts to sound like undifferentiated noise, regardless of what the genre is, you've lost the listener completely, especially in a contest environment.
And the final nail in the coffin was this bizarre inclusion of the Goat Riders Horde.
Oh, this one.
The author was so baffled by it that he seriously questioned whether it was intended as a piss take or a joke.
When your listener suspects they are being pranked by the music,
You have failed.
you've failed the critical task. The source material does acknowledge one single solitary bright spot right at the tail end, though.
Right. Stone sours through glass.
Praised as rather good, but that positive assessment came with this massive caveat.
It was conditional.
Completely. It was conditional on the listener managing to plow through the full 60 minutes of dirge beforehand.
And that effort required for one good song, 60 minutes of genre fatigue and active dislike. That's what cemented its 4th place finish.
In an album quest where repeated listening is mandatory, an album that makes you work that hard for a single payoff is, well, it's functionally eliminated from the start.
So we pivot completely. We move from the violent, genre-betraying frustration of metal dirge to the absolute opposite problem.
Music that is entirely too polite.
Yes. Christina the Queen's debut effort, Chaleur Humaine, was the great eliminator here, consigned to oblivion in 3rd place.
This section is so important because it illustrates a fundamental paradox of modern music consumption.
The critique is just riddled with contradictory praise.
It is. The author acknowledges it as well-produced art pop with undeniable flashes of intrigue. It's certainly not a bad album, technically speaking.
Not at all. And compared to Dido, who actually finished ahead of her, the author found Christina the Queen's less stiff.
He said it conveyed genuine romance and passion.
Those are positive emotional attributes. So how does an emotionally evocative, well-produced album fail so miserably in this contest?
Because the ultimate verdict was that despite the artistry, despite the quality production, the album struggles to engage. And most importantly, it never grabs me by the heart.
It's the difference between appreciation and compulsion.
Perfect. The music is admirable, but it doesn't compel the listener to come back for the necessary, competitive, repeated listens.
This brings us to the crucial observation about this album's function.
Its inherent suitability as a soundtrack.
Yes. The author specifically noted that this music works best as accompaniment to something else. It has this high visual potential.
And we have very specific examples that illustrate this point perfectly.
Yeah.
He suggests that the track Paradise Produce would work really well as backing music on a film.
And that other tracks, like Science Fiction and several others, could slot liberally into any modern TV show and would probably sound great.
This is a profound insight into the failure mechanism. An album that is critically praised for its artistry, its ability to evoke emotion, its production quality, all elements that should score highly in a quest.
It gets actively penalized.
Because its very excellence makes it too skilled at blending into the background.
The requirements of the album quest, this focused, critical, active, repeated listening, are exactly what this album is not optimized for.
If you don't need to pay attention, you won't. And if you don't pay attention, you can't critically rank it. It becomes a blur.
I do have to challenge the author here a little bit on his self-assessment. He noted that his 11-year-old daughter quite likes it.
Right?
Which led him to ask, pretty self-deprecatingly, maybe I'm just getting old.
That is a critical moment in the review. He is conflating his personal listening fatigue, or maybe his expectation of what makes a compelling pop album, with a flaw in the music itself.
He's basically admitting his own bias.
He's implicitly admitting that his generation's expectation might be music that demands your attention, perhaps through volume, or overt catchiness or complexity.
Whereas a younger listener, someone who is maybe more accustomed to consuming media while also doing 5 other things,
they might view music that flows seamlessly into the background, providing atmosphere without demanding focus, as a sign of high quality. It's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. Chaleur Humaine is designed for a modern, multitasking consumption environment, but the album quest demands single tasking.
Therefore, the album was deemed too boring for focused, concentrated listening, even though it is perfectly suited for accompanying visual media.
It's a death sentence in this specific competition.
Its failure is a functional one, not necessarily an artistic one. It's the wrong tool for the job.
So it's eliminated because it's too subtle, too ambient, and just too comfortable to ignore. What a fascinating way to fail.
Having dispatched the actively annoying compilation and the passively ambient art pop, we now transition to the great survivor.
Yes. The critical decider for second place, where Dido's Still on My Mind limps over the line.
We have to stress this. This is a win by avoidance. Dido advances not triumphantly, but by the sheer fact that the other 2 albums were functionally eliminated due to deep listener frustration.
She was the least bad option left.
Pretty much. The source material clearly details the established Dido attributes that define this record. This is Dido delivering exactly what her listeners expect.
Which, as you said, can be both a strength and a weakness in a contest like this.
Let's look at her signature elements as the author defined them. First, the sound is elegant and highly polished. Clinical, even. Her vocals are delicate.
And this is the part that fails the contest test. The melodies are described as so whimsical they might get blown away in a mild breeze.
They're pleasant, but they lack any kind of anchoring weight. However, what saved her, technically speaking, is that the entire album is underpinned by her signature, subtle, dance-like rhythm.
Ah, so it has a pulse.
It maintains a certain forward flow. It keeps things moving, even if you're not fully engaged.
So she is clinical and polished. But the author finds the central critical flaw is still the same as Christine and the Queens. It's just executed a little bit differently.
There is no killer material.
No single track that demands your attention or makes you want to hit repeat.
And the struggle here is the sustained interest curve. The track Hurricanes is used as the key example that defines the entire listening pattern for the album.
How does that pattern go?
It goes like this. The track is interesting for a bit, then the listener loses interest for a bit, then maybe, perhaps, it becomes interesting again, before just fading out.
That fragmented interest pattern is devastating in an album quest. If you can't sustain a critical assessment over the course of a 45-minute album, it means the content is failing to anchor your attention.
The overall effect is that even the tracks the author deemed nice, like Give You Up, You Don't Need a God, and the title track.
They're so easy to switch off from that getting through the album in one sitting felt like a bit of a drag.
This is the critical difference between Dido and Christine and the Queens. Both are passive, background-friendly albums.
Right. But Chaleur Humaine was explicitly deemed too boring for active listening. It was designed, it seems, purely as a backdrop.
Dido, on the other hand, had that underlying subtle dance rhythm and that clinical polish, that stiffness, that kept the listener tethered just enough to prevent complete mental disengagement.
So it's about degrees of passivity.
We can conclude that Dido's second-place finish was a matter of minimal functional merit. She provided just enough melodic structure and rhythmic consistency to be slightly more tolerable than the alternative.
Which was explicitly designed to be ignorable.
The author chose tolerable mediocrity over functional ambient boredom. She survived the elimination round, but with a serious wound.
And so, by process of elimination, which is the ultimate proof that the other 3 failed, we arrive at the winner of Group 215.
Who Built the Moon? By Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds.
Which the author called easily the best offering here.
But we must immediately qualify this victory.
Immediately.
The author notes that while it is the best of this group, He quickly adds that he doesn't think it's as good as Noel Gallagher's first solo album, High Flying Birds.
So the win is explicitly and repeatedly attributed to a chronic lack of competition.
This album is the king of the landfill.
Yet it won. So we have to analyze why it functioned better in this competitive environment. The author pointed to a key structural difference that made the listening experience more engaging.
This is the crucial technical point. Gallagher's music here avoids the traditional, predictable verse-chorus-verse format that defined so much of his Oasis output.
Okay, so what does he do instead?
Instead, the songs are mainly hook-based. They pivot and they rely on these immediate, repetitive motifs that capture your attention quickly.
And the author found this structural novelty more interesting than the material, unfortunately. Let's unpack that for a second. Why would a hook-based structure be functionally superior in this kind of contest?
Because the goal of the album quest is sustained attention during repeated listens. The traditional verse-chorus-verse structure, especially if the material is just adequate, becomes intensely predictable.
And that predictability leads to fatigue.
Quickly, you know exactly when the chorus is coming, and if that chorus isn't excellent, your mind just wanders. You check out.
But a hook-based structure, which is constantly pivoting to a new, catchy, immediate motif that keeps the listener slightly off balance.
It introduces an element of surprise. It forces the brain to re-engage with the new hook, even if the musical content isn't, genius.
So it's structured specifically to prevent the exact mental switching off that doomed Dido and Christine and the Queens.
Precisely. The overall feel of the album, therefore, is one of smooth, competence. It grooves along nicely, yet never having much of an impact.
So it provided a pleasant, slightly surprising flow that the other three albums failed to deliver.
It avoided the extreme unpleasantness of the metal compilation and the extreme passivity of the pop albums. It found the middle ground.
And the review does acknowledge that certain tracks provided the momentum needed for the win. They lifted the album above the pack just enough.
Yes. It's a Beautiful World is highlighted as a definite standout track. It was specifically praised for being quite different to his Oasis material.
Which signifies that Gallagher was genuinely trying something new and actually succeeding.
The title track, The Man Who Built the Moon, is also praised for its energy. And the album's strength is rounded out by Dead in the Water, which the author called excellent.
So even though the overall assessment is pretty lukewarm, those three standout tracks provided enough density of quality to satisfy the requirement for repeated listening.
The key takeaway here is the function of novelty. The structural difference, the departure from his previous work. It provided enough intellectual curiosity and engagement to carry it through.
So the author remained unconvinced that it was a great album.
But it was functionally superior at retaining attention than anything else in Group 215. It advanced based on elimination criteria, not deep musical resonance.
Let's review the final, brutally honest rankings of Group 215, the chore group, and synthesize the crucial lessons for you, the listener.
All right. In fourth place, rejected with maximum prejudice due to genre betrayal and accumulated bias, was the classic Rock the Masters compilation.
In third place, failing the test of focused listening by being just too comfortable and ambient, was Chaleur Humaine by Christine and the Queens.
Second place, limping over the finish line by being just slightly less ignorable, was Still on My Mind by Dido.
And the victor by functional superiority, utilizing that structural novelty to overcome merely adequate material, was Who Built the Moon by Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds.